Hello and welcome back to another lecture. In this lecture, we will use Terraform Module to create a 3-tier VPC architecture. When you create Terraform Module, it allows you to use the same code to create as many VPCs as you want. To start, the first thing I want you to do is open Visual Studio Code. Once you've opened Visual Studio Code, the next thing I want you to do is open your project folder. To open the project folder, I'll select the Explorer here. I'm going to click Open Folder. Browse to the directory where you saved your project folder. My project folder is on the desktop. I'll select Desktop. And on my desktop, my project folder is the Terraform Modules. I'll select this folder. Once you select this folder, make sure you don't click to go into the folder. Just select it, and once you select it, click Select Folder. There you go, we have opened our project folder. Once you open your project folder, you should see the name of your project folder here. I'm going to close this. To create the Terraform module for the VPC, the next thing I want you to do is create a folder in this directory. To create a folder, right-click in here and select New Folder. Give the folder a name and call it Modules. Once you've given the folder a name, press Enter. We have successfully created the folder that will store all of our Terraform module, and you can see it here. The next thing I want you to do is create another folder in this modules folder, and we will call that folder VPC. This is the folder that will store our Terraform module for the VPC. To create a folder in the modules folder, first make sure you select the modules folder by clicking it. Once you've selected it, click this icon to create a new folder and call that folder VPC. Once you've called the folder VPC, press Enter. There you go. We have created our VPC folder in the modules folder. The next thing I want you to do is select the VPC folder. Once you have selected the VPC folder, we will create 3 Terraform files in that folder. The first Terraform file we will create, we'll call it main.tf. So make sure you click on the VPC folder. Click on it. Once you've clicked on it, select this icon to create a new file. Then call the file main.tf. Once you've called the file main.tf, press Enter. We will create the second file in the VPC folder. Select the VPC folder. Then click New File. We will call this file variables.tf. Once you've given the file a name, press Enter. Once you have created the variables file, we will create another file in this VPC folder, and we will call that file outputs.tf. Make sure you select the VPC. Once you've selected the VPC, click New File here. Name the file outputs.tf. Once you've given the file a name, press Enter. These are the 3 files we will use to create our VPC module. The first file is main.tf, and this is the file that will contain our code. The second file is variables.tf, and this is the file that will contain our variable. The third file is outputs.tf, and this is the file we will use to export the value we want to reference in another module. To start writing our code, first I want you to close the output.tf file for now. We are just going to leave the main.tf and the variable.tf file for now. The next thing I want you to do is download and open the reference file I created for this project in this video's description. This is the reference file we will use to create the VPC module, and in this reference file, I've included the resource type and arguments that we need. If you want to find any of this resource type in the Terraform documentation, all you have to do is select these 2, right-click to copy it, and paste it in Google. It will take you to the exact location of this syntax in the Terraform documentation. The next thing I want you to do is select everything in this reference file. To select everything in this reference file, press Ctrl A, then right-click to copy. Once you've copied it, close the reference file. Then come back to your main.tf file. make sure you are in the main.tf file and paste it in there. Once you've pasted the syntax in there, scroll all the way up. The next thing I want you to do is select the variables.tf file. Once you select it, it is going to open it. I want you to click and hold it, then drag it somewhere here. So that way you have two split screens. On this side, we have the main.tf, and on this side, we have the variable.tf. I'm going to drag this somewhere here. And to create space on your screen, you can also click the Explorer here to close the Explorer. To start writing our code, the first thing I want you to do is come to the variable file. In the variable file, we will create two variables. Call the first variable region. Type variable. Once you type variable, I'm going to autocomplete. Then for your variable name, call it region. This is the variable we will use to specify the region we want to create the VPC in. Once you've created your variable, we won't enter any information in here. I want you to press backspace and also come here. Press backspace here so your code looks like this. The next variable we will create, we will call it project name. And this is the variable we will use to give our project a name. So what I want you to do is copy this region variable. I'll select it and copy it. Then I'm going to come down here. I'll paste it here. Then once you paste it, all you have to do is modify the variable name. I'm going to delete this. And I'll call this variable project name. Once you have created both variables, next I want you to come to the main.tf file. And in here, we will start writing our code. The first syntax will create a VPC. And this is the resource type and reference name I have given it. The first argument we will enter is the CIDR block. For the CIDR block, let's create a variable for it. So come to your variables file. In this variables file, I'm going to copy this and press enter and paste it here. Once you've pasted, we are going to modify the variable name. Call the variable VPC CIDR. This is the variable we will use to specify the CIDR block for our VPC. So for the CIDR block argument, we are going to reference this variable. To reference the variable, we are going to type var dot the name of the variable, which is VPC CIDR. The next argument is the instance tenancy, and we will type default for the value. In double quotes, type default. The next argument will enable DNS hostname in our VPC, and for that argument, we have entered true. For the next argument, we will give our VPC a tag name. For the tag name, I want you to come into this bracket, and in this bracket, we want to reference our project name. So anytime we create a VPC, it will be project name -VPC. So in here, I want you to reference your project name variable. To reference your project name variable, type var dot project name, which is what we entered here. So you can copy this name here and paste it after the period. The next syntax will create an internet gateway and attach the internet gateway to the VPC. The first argument is the VPC ID. We created the VPC up here. So what you can do is copy the resource type and the reference name. Once you copy it under VPC ID, paste it here. Then remove the double quotes between them. Add a period. Come all the way to the end. Add another period and type ID. The next argument we will enter is the tag name. And for the tag name, we want to reference our project name so that it reads project name -internet gateway, similar to what we did up here. So what I want you to do is copy this here. And in this bracket, you can paste it in there. So this is going to be our project name dash internet gateway. The next syntax will use data source to get a list of all the availability zones in the region where we are creating our VPC. And this is the syntax to do that. In the next syntax, we will create our public subnet AZ1. This is the resource type to create a subnet, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument we will enter is the VPC ID. For the VPC ID, we referenced it up here. So I'm going to copy this. And I'll come down here and paste it here. The next argument we will enter is the CIDR block. For the CIDR block, let's create a variable for it. So I'm going to copy my variable here. Then I'll come down and paste it in there. I'm going to modify the variable name. I'll call this variable public subnet AZ1 CIDR. Once you've given your variable a name, select the name and copy it. Then under the CIDR block argument, we are going to reference that variable. Type var, period, and paste the variable name next to it. The next argument we will enter is the availability zone. Remember, we are using data source to get a list of all the availability zones in the region where we want to create the VPC. So to specify a specific availability zone in that region, we are going to copy this information here. So copy everything here and paste it here. Then I want you to remove the quotes, add a period, come here, remove the quotes, add a period, then come all the way to the end, remove the quote, add another period. Once you add the period, type names. Hello guys. So when you get to this point where you are typing the value for your availability zone, it should be data.aws availability zones.availability-zones.names. Type the name with an S. I made an error here which I fixed later on in the lecture, but I want you to correct yours now. So when you type the value for your availability zone, you should type it like this. It is data.aws availability zones.availability-zones.names. Names with an S. Also, for other syntax in this lecture where we referenced our availability zone, make sure you type it with an S after the name. So it is names, not name. Thank you. Bracket. In that bracket, type 0. When you type 0 in here, this is called indexing. What this means is when we get the list of the availability zones in the region where we want to create our VPC, we will select the first availability zone in that region. If you change this number to 1, that means that when you get a list of all the availability zones in this region, you want to select the second one. For this project, we are going to select 0 here for our first availability zone. The next argument is map public IP on launch, and for this argument, we will type true. The next argument is tags, and we'll give it a tag name. We'll call it public subnet AZ1. The next syntax will create the public subnet in the second availability zone. This is the resource type to create a subnet, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument is the VPC ID. Remember, we referenced our VPC ID up here. So I'm going to select this to copy it. And I'm going to paste it here. The next argument we will enter is the CIDR block. For our CIDR block, let's create a variable for it. I'm going to come to the variable file and I'll copy this. Once you copy it, press enter and paste it down here. Then modify the name and change this to AZ2. So this variable should read public subnet AZ2 CIDR. Once you have created the variable name, select it and copy it. Once you copy it, come back to the main.tf file and we are going to reference that variable. To reference the variable, we'll type var dot and paste the variable name there. The next argument is the availability zone. For this subnet, we will create it in the second availability zone. So what I want you to do is copy this. Once you copy this availability zone for public subnet AZ1, paste it here. And all you have to do is modify this number. So here, I'm going to change this number from 0 to 1. So this means that we are creating our public subnet AZ1 in the first availability zone, and we are creating our public subnet AZ2 in the second availability zone. The next argument is map public IP on launch, and we will type true. The next argument is tags. We will give it a name and we will call it public subnet AZ2. The next syntax will create a route table and add a public route to it. This is the resource type to create a route table, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument we will enter is the VPC ID. We referenced our VPC ID up here. I'm going to select it and copy it here. And I'm going to paste it here. The next argument is the CIDR block. For the CIDR block, the destination is going to be anywhere on the internet. So here, I want you to type 0.0.0.0/0. In double quotes, type your CIDR block. This is how you enter a CIDR block that the destination is anywhere on the internet. The next argument is the gateway ID, and this will be the ID of our internet gateway. Remember, we created our internet gateway up here. I'll scroll back up. This is our internet gateway. We will copy the resource type and the reference name. Then come back down. Paste it in here. Remove the double quotes between them. Add a period. Come all the way to the end. Add another period and type ID. The next argument we will enter is tags. For the tag name, we will call it public route table. The next syntax is going to associate the public subnet AZ1 to the public route table we just created. This is the resource type to associate a subnet with a route table, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument we are going to enter is the ID of the subnet we want to associate with the route table. The ID of the subnet we want to associate in this syntax is the ID of our public subnet AZ1. So what I want you to do is scroll up. This is the resource that is creating the public subnet AZ1. Select the resource type and the reference name. Copy it, then come back down. Paste it in here. Remove the double quotes between them. Add a period. Come all the way to the end. Add another period and type ID. The next argument we will enter is the ID of the route table we want to associate this public subnet AZ1 to. The route table we want to associate the public subnet AZ1 to is the public route table we created up here. So I want you to select the resource type and the reference name. Copy it. Come back down. Paste it in here. Remove the double quotes between them. Add a period. Come all the way to the end. Add another period and type ID. This is how we associate the public subnet AZ1 to the public route table we created. The next syntax is going to associate the public subnet AZ2 to the public route table. This is the resource type and the reference name. The first argument is subnet ID. So let's scroll up. This is the syntax that is creating the public subnet AZ2. Copy the resource type and the reference name. Once you've copied it, come back down. Paste it here. Remove the double quotes. Add a period. Come all the way to the end. Add another period and type ID. The next argument is the route table ID, and this is the route table we want to associate the public subnet AZ2 to. The route table is the public route table, and we referenced it here. So just copy this here and paste it here. The next syntax is going to create the private app subnet AZ1. This is the resource type to create a subnet, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument is VPC ID. So let's scroll up to get our VPC ID. We referenced our VPC ID here, so you can copy this. Come back down and paste it here. The next argument is CIDR block, and this is going to create the CIDR block for our subnet. To create the CIDR block, let's create a variable for it. So in here, I'm going to copy this variable. Once you copy the variable, I'm going to press enter and paste it down here. Then modify the variable name. The variable name is going to be private app subnet AZ1 CIDR. Once you have entered the variable name, select it to copy it. Then we are going to reference it here. To reference it, type var, period, and paste the variable name next to it. The next argument we will enter is the availability zone. We want to create this subnet in the first availability zone. So let's scroll up. When we created our public subnet AZ1, we created it in the first availability zone. So here, what we can do is copy this and come back down, then paste it here. Remember, the index 0 is the first availability zone, index 1 is the second availability zone. The next argument is map public IP on launch. For this, we will type false. The next argument is tags. For the tag name, we'll call it private app subnet AZ1. The next syntax will create the private app subnet in the second availability zone. For this syntax, this is the resource type to create a subnet, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument is the VPC ID. We reference the VPC ID here. I'm going to copy this and paste it here. The next argument is the CIDR block. For the CIDR block, we will create a variable for it. So I want you to come to the variable file, copy this, and press enter. Paste it down here. All we have to do here is modify the name, and I'll change this to 2. So your variable should read private app subnet AZ2 CIDR. Once you've created the variable, copy the variable name. Once you've copied the variable name, we will reference it here. Type var dot and paste the variable name there. The next argument is availability zone, and we want to create the private app subnet AZ2 in the second availability zone. So let's copy this here and paste it here. And all we have to do is modify the index, change it from 0 to 1. So what this means is we will create the private app subnet AZ2 in the second availability zone. The next argument is map public IP on launch. Because this subnet is a private subnet, we don't want any instance with launch in it to have a public IP address. So here we are going to type false. The next argument is tags. For the tag name, we'll call it private app subnet AZ2. The next syntax is going to create the private data subnet in the first availability zone. This is the resource type to create a subnet, and this is the reference name I gave it. The first argument is VPC ID. So let's copy the VPC ID up here and paste it here. The next argument is the CIDR block. For the CIDR block, we will create a variable for it. So let's copy this variable in our variable file. And we are going to press enter and paste it here. Once you've pasted the variable, we'll modify the variable name, and this should read private data subnet AZ1. The variable name should be private data subnet AZ1. I'm going to drag this so you can see everything better. The variable is private data subnet AZ1. Once you've entered the name, copy the variable name. And we will reference it here. Here we are going to type var dot and paste that variable name there. The next argument is the availability zone. We will create the private data subnet AZ1 in the first availability zone. So let's scroll up. This is where we are creating this subnet in the first availability zone. So let's copy this and come back down. We'll paste it here. Make sure the index is 0. 0 is the first availability zone. The next argument is map public IP on launch. For this, we will type false because this is a private subnet. The next argument is the tags. For the tag name, we'll call it private data subnet AZ1. The last syntax is going to create the private data subnet in the second availability zone. This is the resource type to create a subnet, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument is the VPC ID, and this is the VPC we want to create this subnet in. We reference the VPC here, so copy this and paste it here. The next argument we will enter is the CIDR block for this subnet. Let's come to the variable file to create a variable for it. I'll copy this variable. Then I'll press enter, paste it here. All you have to do now once you paste it is modify the name. We will change it to private data subnet AZ2 CIDR. So make sure this reads private data subnet AZ2 CIDR. Once you've created the variable, copy the variable name. Then come back to your main.tf file. We will reference that variable. We'll type var dot and paste the name of the variable next to it. The next argument is the availability zone. We will create the private data subnet AZ2 in the second availability zone. So what I want you to do is copy this here and paste it here. When you paste it, don't forget to change the index to 1. So this is going to create the private data subnet AZ2 in the second availability zone. The next argument is map public IP on launch. and it is going to be false. The last argument is tags. For the tag name, we'll call it private data subnet AZ2. We are done creating the main.tf file and the variable file for our VPC module. The next thing I want you to do is save this file. To save the file, click File up here and select Save All. Review your work to make sure you've entered everything correctly. The next thing we will create for the VPC module is the output. The output will allow us to export some values from this VPC, and we can reference those values when we create other resources. To create our output, I want you to select in here, then open the Explorer by clicking this. Select outputs.tf, and that is going to open your outputs.tf here. Once you open the outputs.tf, you can close the Explorer again. The first output we will create will export our region. To create the output, type output here. Once you type output and press enter, we are going to enter the name of our output here. For the name of the output, enter region. Once you've entered the name of your output, come down here, and down here type value equals. It is value space equals sign space, and the value we want to enter here is our region variable. So in here, I want you to type var.region. So what this means is whatever value we enter for our region variable, we want to export that value here. The next value we are going to export is our project name. So I want you to copy this output, press enter, and paste it here. We are going to modify it. The name of the output is going to be project name. The name of the output is project name, and the value is going to be our variable project name. So here, I want you to change this and type project name. So just like we did for the region, this means that whatever value we enter for the project name, we want to export that value in our output file. The next value we will export is our VPC ID. I want you to copy this output, press enter, and paste it here. We are going to modify the output name and change it to VPC_ID. We will use this output to export the ID of our VPC. For the value, we are going to reference our VPC ID. Remember, we reference our VPC ID in the main.tf file here. So I'm just going to select this to copy it and paste it in here. The next output we want to create will export the public subnet AZ1's ID. So what I want you to do is select this output here, copy it, press enter twice, paste it down here. We are going to modify this output and we will change the name. For the name of this output, call it public subnet AZ1 ID. This is the name of the output, and this output will export the ID of our public subnet AZ1. For the value of this output, let's come to our main.tf file and scroll up. We created our public subnet AZ1 here. So to reference the ID of this public subnet AZ1, we'll copy the resource type and the reference name. We'll paste it here. We'll modify it, remove the double quotes, add a period, come all the way to the end, add another period and type ID. This is how we reference the ID of our public subnet AZ1. The next output we will reference is the ID of our public subnet AZ2. So I want you to select this output, copy it, then press enter, paste it here. We will modify the name. It is going to be public subnet AZ2 ID. Change the AZ to 2. And for the value, this is where we created our public subnet AZ2. Copy the resource type and the reference name. Once you copy it, paste it in here. Remove the double quotes between them, add a period, come all the way to the end, add another period and type ID. The next output will export our private app subnet AZ1. So what I want you to do is select this output, copy it, come down, paste it here. We are going to modify the name and we'll call it private app subnet AZ1 ID. Once you have given the output a name, for the value, we will come to our main.tf file, scroll down. This is the resource that is creating our private app subnet AZ1. Copy the resource type and the reference name. Paste it here. Remove the double quotes between them. Add a period. Come all the way to the end. Add another period and type ID. The next output we will create will export the value of our private app subnet AZ2. So I want you to copy this output here. Come down. Paste it here. We are going to modify the name of the output. This should be private app subnet AZ2 ID. Change this to 2. I noticed that I spelled my subnet wrong, so I'm going to change this to subnet. And I also change this here to subnet. The next thing we will do is modify the value. This is where we created our private app subnet AZ2. So copy the resource type and the reference name, and we will paste it here. Remove the double quotes between them, add a period, come all the way to the end, add another period and type ID. The next output we will create will export the value of our private data subnet AZ1. So I want you to copy this output here. Press enter, paste it here. Modify the name of the output. It is going to be private data subnet. Change this to data subnet AZ1 ID. And for the value, this is the resource that is creating the private data subnet AZ1. So I want you to copy the resource type and the reference name. I'm going to replace this with it. Remove the double quotes. Add a period. Come all the way to the end. Add another period and type ID. The next output will export the value of our private data subnet AZ2. What I want you to do is select this output, copy it, then come down, paste it here. We will modify the name of the output. Make sure the output reads private data subnet AZ2 ID. Change the AZ1 to AZ2. Then for the value, this is where we created our private data subnet AZ2. Copy the resource type and the reference name. and come to the value here, and we will paste it here. Remove the double quotes, add a period, come all the way to the end, add another period and type ID. The last output we will create will export our internet gateway. The reasons why we are creating this output is because we have to reference them when we create other resources. So I want you to copy this output and come down, paste it here. We will modify the name of the output. Call the name of the output Internet Gateway. Once you enter the name of the output, for the value, we will reference the resource that is creating our Internet Gateway. In the main.tf file, scroll up. This is the resource that is creating the Internet Gateway. I want you to copy the resource type and the reference name. Copy it. And for the value here, paste it here. Remove the double quotes between them and add a period. This is all you need to do to reference the Internet Gateway. We are not going to add ID at the end. We just want to reference the Internet Gateway. These are all the outputs we need to export to complete this project. Once you've entered your outputs, the next thing I want you to do is review your syntax to make sure you have typed everything properly. Once you finish reviewing your work, the next thing I want you to do is save your file. Click File and select Save All. This is all we need to do to create the module for the VPC. The next thing I want you to do is close this file. I'm going to click this X to close everything. Then select your Explorer to open the Explorer here. We have created our VPC module. Now that we have created the module for the VPC, we can reference the module. To reference the module, I want you to create a folder here. When you are creating the folder, make sure you don't create it in your modules folder. Just click anywhere down here and create the folder. To create the folder, select New Folder here. Give the folder a name. I'll give the folder the name of this project and I'll call it Jupyter Website ECS. Once you've given the project a name, press Enter. To make this clear, we will use this folder to create a VPC. So basically what I'm trying to say is, for every project you are trying to create where you want to reference this module, you will create a folder for that project and you can reference this module from that project's folder. The next thing I want you to do is select this project folder you created and create a new file in it. Once you've selected it, we will create a new file in it. Click New File. We will call this first file backend.tf. Once you've called it backend.tf, press Enter. If you notice, the backend.tf file I created is in the Jupyter website. Let me drag this out so you can see. If you notice, if I select this drop down, my backend.tf file is in the Jupyter website ECS folder. If I click the drop down on this module, you can see we have two folders. One we called it modules. The other one we called it Jupyter Website ECS. So make sure when you are creating your folder structure that you are creating the file in the right folder. Once you've created the backend.tf file, I want you to download and open this reference file in this video's description. This is the reference file we will use to create our backend. What I want you to do is select everything in this reference file. I'll press Ctrl A to select everything. Right click to copy it, close it, then come back to your backend.tf file, paste it in there. We will use this backend file to store our state file for the Jupyter Website ECS project in S3. So what I want you to do is enter your value here. The first argument we will enter is our bucket name. We created the bucket for our state file in the previous lecture. So I want you to go to the management console. In the management console, type S3 in the search box and select S3 under services. In the S3 console, this is the bucket we are using to store our Terraform state file. Select it. Select the bucket name here and copy it. Once you've copied the bucket name, go back to your Terraform file. In double quotes, paste the bucket name here. The next argument we will enter is the key, and this is the unique name Terraform will use to store our state file. For the key, I want you to name it Jupyter Website ECS.tfstate. In double quotes, I will name it the same name of my project. You can call this key any name you want, but for best practice, I always like to name the key the same name of my project, because we will be storing multiple state files for different projects in the same S3 bucket. So it is best to name your state file the same name of the project. The next argument is the region. The region we are using for this project is US East 1. So type US East 1 in here. The next argument is profile, and this is the profile we configured on our computer in the previous lecture. The profile contains the access key ID and secret access key that we will use to authenticate with our AWS environment. For the profile name that I configured on my computer, I called it Terraform user, so I'll type it in here. This is all we need to do to create our backend file that will store the state file for our project in S3. The next thing I want you to do is save this file. Click File and select Save All. Once you've saved this file, you can close it. Next, we are going to create another file in our project folder. So select your Jupyter Website ECS project folder. Click New File. Give the file a name and call the file variables.tf. Once you've given the file a name, press Enter. For the variables file you just created in your project folder, what you must do is you must open this variables file you created in your VPC module. So select this variables file. I'm going to click it and drag it here so I can split the screen. And all you need to do is copy all these variables. The variable you are seeing here, this is the variable we created in our VPC module. So what you must do is copy all these variables and you will paste it in the variables you created in your project folder. So come here and paste it there. So basically what we are doing here is we copy all these variables from the VPC module and we paste it in the variables we created in our project folder. Once you've pasted the variable in there, close this, and that's all you need to do to create your variable. The next thing we are going to do is create another file in our project folder, and we'll call this file main.tf. So what I want you to do is select your project folder. I called my project folder Jupyter Website ECS. Once you've selected your project folder, click New File. Call the file main.tf. Once you've given the file the name main.tf, press Enter. The main.tf file is what we will use to reference our VPC module. So for every project folder you create in the future, you will have a main.tf file in it. And in that main.tf file, that is how you will reference your VPC module. Once you've created your main.tf file, the first syntax we will create in it is the syntax to authenticate with our AWS environment. So the first thing I'm going to do is type my notes to explain what the syntax is doing. Once you type your notes, press enter. We will configure our provider to authenticate with our AWS environment. To configure your provider, you will type provider. Once I start to type provider, I'll press enter for autocomplete. Then I will give my provider a name. The cloud provider I want to authenticate to is AWS. So I'm going to type AWS in here. Once you type AWS in here, come down here. The first argument we will enter here is region. So enter region. Once you enter region, press space, equal, space again. Before we enter the value for our region, the next thing I want you to do is take your variables file, bring it here to dock it here so we have a split screen. I'm going to close the File Explorer for now. So for the region, we want to reference the variable region in our variables file. So here we are going to type var.region. Once you type your region, press enter. The next argument we will enter is profile. Type profile in here. For profile, press space, an equal sign, and another space. And for our profile, this is the profile name we configured on our computer in the previous lecture. The profile that I configured on my computer in the previous lecture, I called it Terraform user. So I'll type Terraform user in here in double quotes. This is all we need to do to create the syntax to authenticate with our AWS environment. To make your code cleaner, press the tab key here. I always like to arrange the equal sign under each other. So press the tab key here again. And this will arrange the equal sign under each other. Once you have created your provider syntax, press enter and press enter again. The next syntax will create our VPC. And to create our VPC, we will reference the VPC module. To start, here type a note and call it create VPC. Once you've typed your note, press enter. To reference the VPC module, the next thing we are going to do here is we are going to reference our VPC module. To reference your VPC module, you will start by typing module in here. Once you type module, press enter to autocomplete it. The next thing you will do is give your module a name. You can call it any name you want. Since we are using this module to create VPC, I'll call this module VPC. Once you have given your module a name, press the down arrow key. The next argument we are going to enter in here is source. This is very important. So type source in here, space equal, space again. The source will allow us to reference the VPC module. If I hover over the source here, you can read the definition. It says source is where to load your module from. So once you enter source, for the value, we will enter double quotes, double period, / where our module is located. Remember, our module is in the modules folder. So here we'll call it modules. The modules I enter in here is the same exact name as the modules folder that my VPC is in. So whatever you call the folder where your VPC module is in, that is what you enter in here. Then enter another / In this modules folder, my VPC module is in the VPC folder, and you are going to enter VPC in here. This is how you specify the path to your VPC module. It is double period. The double period means go up to directory. Since we are in a folder, it is going to come out of this folder and come into the modules folder. And in the modules folder, it is going to find my VPC module in the VPC folder. This is how you specify your source. It is very important. Once you have specified the source, press enter. The next thing we will do is list all the variables we have in our variables file here. To list all these variables, I'm going to copy this and paste it here. Add an equal sign. Before I enter the value, I'm just going to list everything for now. To make everything clear, all we did is we list all the variables we have under our variable files in here. If you look, starting from region all the way to the end, it's the same thing I have here all the way to the end. Once you have listed all your variables here, another thing I like to do is arrange the equal sign under each other. So what I'll do here is press the tab key, and I will arrange the rest of the equal sign under each other. Once you have arranged all your equal sign under each other, I'm going to close the Explorer for now so I have more space. I'll drag this here. The next thing we need to do is enter the value for this argument here. To enter the value, all you have to do is type var and the name. So for every one of these, all you do is type var dot the name. For example, for the region, we will type var dot region. For project name, we will type var dot project name. For VPC CIDR, we will type var dot VPC CIDR. For public subnet AZ1 CIDR, we will type var dot public subnet AZ1 CIDR. For public subnet AZ2 CIDR, we will type var dot public subnet AZ2 CIDR. For private app subnet AZ1 CIDR, we will type var dot private app subnet AZ1 CIDR. For private app subnet AZ2 CIDR, we will type var dot private app subnet AZ2 CIDR. For private data subnet AZ1 CIDR, we will type var dot private data subnet AZ1 CIDR. For private data subnet AZ2 CIDR, we will type var dot private data subnet AZ2 CIDR. This is all we need to do to reference our VPC module. The next thing I want you to do is save your file. Click File and select Save All. Once you've saved your file, open the Explorer again. Once you open the Explorer, before we proceed to the next thing, I want you to review your work to make sure you've typed everything correctly. Once you've reviewed your work and everything looks fine, I'm going to close this main.tf file. The next thing we will do is create another file that contains the values of our variable. We will create this file in our project folder, and my project folder, I called it Jupyter Website ECS. I'll click on this project folder, select New File, and call the file Terraform.tfvars. Make sure you spell the name correctly. It is Terraform.tfvars. Once you've typed Terraform.tfvars, press enter. In the Terraform.tfvars, this is where we will enter the values for our variables. So what I want you to do is take your variable and drag it here to split the screen. The next thing I want you to do is list all the names of your variables from your variables.tf file into the Terraform.tfvars. So you will start at region, project name, VPC CIDR, all the way to the end. You will list it here. To make sure you don't spell anything wrong, what I like to do is copy paste. So I'll copy my region, paste it here, and enter my equal sign. When you enter your equal sign, make sure there isn't a space there. Just enter your equal sign. I'll copy my project name. I'll press enter here, paste it in here, and enter my equal sign. Press enter, paste it here, and enter the equal sign. I'll copy the public subnet AZ1 CIDR, and I'll copy the public subnet AZ2 CIDR. So copy everything from the top to bottom and paste it here and enter the equal sign. Once you have entered the name of all your variables in the Terraform.tfvars file, the next thing we will do is enter the actual value we want to use. For region, we want to create this resource in US East 1, so we will type US East 1 in here in double quotes. For the project name, I'll call it Jupiter. For the VPC CIDR block, I will enter a CIDR block of 10.0.0.0/16. For the public subnet AZ1 CIDR, I will enter a CIDR block of 10.0.0.0/24. For the public subnet AZ2 CIDR, I will enter a CIDR block of 10.0.1.0/24. For private app subnet AZ1 CIDR, I will enter a CIDR block of 10.0.2.0/24. So what I'll do is copy this, paste it here, and I'll modify this. I'll change it to 2. For the private app subnet AZ2 CIDR, I'm going to enter a CIDR block of 10.0.3.0/24. So what I'll do is copy this, paste it here, and I'm going to modify this and change it to 3. For the private data subnet AZ1 CIDR, I'm going to use a CIDR block of 10.0.4.0/24. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and modify this by changing this to 4. And for the last variable, private data subnet AZ2 CIDR, I'm going to enter a CIDR block of 10.0.5.0/24. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here, modify it, and change this to 5. This is all we need to do to write the syntax that will create our VPC using Terraform Module. Once you've created everything, again, review your work to make sure you've typed everything correctly. Then I want you to save your file. Click File and select Save All. Once you've selected Save All, I'm going to close my variables.tf file, and you can also close your terraforms.tfvars file. If you want, you can open your main.tf file under your project folder. The next thing we will do is use this module to create the VPC in our AWS environment. To create the VPC in your AWS environment, make sure you right-click on your project folder. So my project folder is Jupyter Website ECS. Right-click on it and select Open in Integrated Terminal. Once you right-click on your project folder and select Open in Integrated Terminal, it will open the terminal to your project folder. If you look here, my terminal is open to the Jupyter Website ECS folder. This is very important. Make sure you open your terminal to your project folder. Once you've opened your terminal to your project folder, the first thing we will do is initialize with our AWS environment. To initialize with your AWS environment, we are going to type Terraform init. Once you type Terraform init, press enter. Terraform is initializing with my AWS environment, and I'll give it some time to finish initializing. There you go. Terraform has successfully initialized with my AWS environment. The first thing you must do is initialize Terraform. Once you have initialized Terraform, the next command we will type is Terraform apply. Terraform apply will create the VPC in our AWS environment. Once you type Terraform apply, press enter. So here, this is one of the things about working with Terraform. I am getting this error, unsupported attribute. This is also important when you are working with Terraform. It is rare that you will be able to write your syntax without missing something somewhere. Anytime you get an error, how you can troubleshoot the error is, here I can already see in what file I have the error in. I have the error in my modules VPC main.tf file. That is what that is showing here. And the lines that I'm having the error is line 114, line 102, line 90, line 78, line 40. If I scroll down, Terraform is also giving me the hint here. For each of these syntax, I am using name, but I should have used names. So all I am missing here is S. This is one of the things I like about Terraform. So anytime you are running your Terraform code and you get an error, make sure you read the error message to understand what you did wrong. I am glad this happened to show you this part of Terraform. So the next thing we need to do is fix our syntax. Go into the modules VPC and select the main.tf file. So in this main.tf file, scroll down, and for your availability zones, where we have the name here, we need to change it to names. So I'm just going to scroll down on all of them. I entered name, and I'll change it to names. Also, if you look in the error message, Terraform is telling you the lines that you have that error. If you see, this is line 78, and Terraform is telling me I have that error in line 78. This is another way you can troubleshoot your error. I'll enter S here, scroll down. The next one is line 90, which is here. I'm going to enter S here, scroll down. The next one is line 102. You can see 102. I'm going to enter S here, scroll down. The next one is line 114. If I scroll down here, line 114, I'm going to enter S here. I believe these are all the places that I have the error. So once you fix it, click File and save your file again. I'll select Save All. Then come to your terminal and we are going to run Terraform apply again. Type Terraform apply. To run the last command you type, press up on your arrow key, and that is going to bring the last command you ran. Then press enter. There you go, my code is now working properly. Anytime you type Terraform apply, the first thing Terraform will do is show you the plan of the resources it will create in your AWS account. Feel free to review the resources, and once you are happy with everything, come all the way down. Terraform is asking you this question: do you want to perform these actions? We will type yes and press enter. There you go, Terraform is now creating the VPC in our AWS account, and I'll give it some time to finish creating it. Another thing I also want to mention is when Terraform is creating the VPC, you can see here that Terraform is using the module. Terraform has successfully created the VPC in my AWS account. The next thing I'm going to do is go into my AWS account to verify that the VPC is there. In your AWS account, type VPC in the search box and select VPC under Services. On the VPC dashboard, we are going to select this drop-down to filter by VPC, and I'll select the Jupyter VPC I just created. Once you filter by your VPC, select VPCs here. And there you go. You can see the VPC I just created. The name of my project is Jupyter, and it is joining it Jupyter VPC. This is how we enter the tag. For this VPC, you can see the CIDR block here, 10.0.0.0/16. Let's review the subnets. I'm going to select subnets. In this VPC, you can see that I have 6 subnets. I'm going to sort this in order. You can see I have public subnet EZ1, public subnet EZ2. I'm going to drag this out. Private app subnet EZ1, private app subnet EZ2. Private data subnet EZ1, private data subnet EZ2. These are also the CIDR blocks I specified in my Terraform.tfvars file. The next thing we can review is the route tables. Select route tables. You can see the public route table we created, and we associate 2 subnets to that public route table. If you select that route table, under routes, you can see we are routing traffic to the internet through the internet gateway. And if we select subnet associations, the public subnet EZ1 and public subnet EZ2 is associated with this route table. These are all the resources we entered in our Terraform file, and we have verified that Terraform has created those resources in our AWS account. Let's go back to our Terraform file. If you want to delete the VPC you just created in your AWS account, in the terminal, type Terraform destroy, and it will delete the VPC it created in your AWS account. This is how you use Terraform Module to create a VPC. The next thing we will do is push our code to the GitHub repository. To push your code to the GitHub repository, select source control here. And in this box, we are going to type a message. I'll type created VPC file. Once you type your message, click this check mark to commit it. Once you've committed your message, click sync changes to push it to your GitHub repository. I'll click this button. And there you go. We have successfully pushed our code to the GitHub repository. If I go back to my GitHub repository, in my GitHub account, I'll select this icon to go to the home page. And I'm going to select the Terraform Modules repository. There you go. In the Terraform Modules repository, you can see all the files we created on our computer. We have pushed it into this repository. This is how you use Terraform Module to create a VPC. If you have any questions or there's any part of this lecture you don't understand, please leave your comments below. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.